They were 4 seconds away from getting him into the van when Sonia grabbed the bigger one from behind. She didn't think. Her hands just moved, fingers locking around the collar of his jacket, full body weight yanking backward. The man stumbled. The boy's arm pulled free for half a second. That was enough. She didn't know the boy. She didn't know the men. She just knew he was probably 7 years old and screaming, and nobody else on that street was doing anything about it. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known standing there on a rain-soaked Soulside street at 2 a.m. with a torn grocery bag at her feet, was whose son she had just saved. Before we continue, I'm curious. Where are you watching from right now? On your phone in bed, on your laptop, or on your TV? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to include your country too. I'd love to know where these stories are reaching. Welcome to Lily's Afro-Korean Mafia Tales. Rewind 26 hours. Sonia Johnson was a Nigerian woman, living the kind of life that looks fine from the outside and exhausting from the inside. 31 years old. Lagos-born, Seoul resident, convenience store employee. Her English had a Lagos rhythm that 6 years in Korea hadn't touched, and her Korean was good enough to handle customers and bad enough that her coworkers still laughed when she tried to order food on the phone. She came to Seoul for David. David Johnson, her husband, her person, the man who made every bad decision feel like an adventure, had taken a logistics management position with Kong Group, one of Korea's largest industrial conglomerates, in 2019. Sonia had packed up her life in Lagos and followed him without blinking. That was how it was with them. Where he went, she went. That was the deal. David died 14 months after they arrived. The official report from Kong Group said factory accident. Structural failure in a storage unit at one of their subsidiary facilities in Incheon. David had been doing a routine inspection. Wrong place, wrong time. The company expressed deep condolences. They sent flowers and a settlement offer and a representative in a nice suit who sat across from Sonia in a hospital waiting room and used the word unfortunate 4 times in 6 minutes. Sonia had kept the incident report. She didn't know why exactly. She just folded it up and put it in the drawer next to David's watch and his immigration documents and his Lagos FC keychain, and every few months she took it out and read it again, looking for the thing that felt wrong about it. She could never name the thing. She just knew it was there. She stayed in Seoul because going back to Lagos meant admitting it was over, and she wasn't ready for that. She stayed because her daughter Laura, 4 years old when David died, now 7, had started school here and had friends and could count to 20 in Korean, and uprooting her felt like one more thing Sonia couldn't absorb. So she stayed. She worked. She sent money to her mother in Lagos every month even when her own account was painful to look at. She made sure Laura had everything she needed. She kept the lights on and the refrigerator stocked, and she did not fall apart in front of her daughter. Not once. She was walking home from her second shift at 11:58 p.m. the night before everything changed, carrying 2 bags of groceries, when her phone rang. Her mother. She picked up, wedging it between her ear and shoulder, adjusting the bags. Her mother's voice was warm and chaotic, the way Lagos at midnight always sounded through a phone line. She was asking about Laura's report card and complaining about the neighbor's generator noise and telling Sonia she needed to eat more because she sounded thin, which was not a thing that made sense, but her mother said it anyway. Sonia laughed. Actually laughed. Walking through the quiet side streets of her neighborhood in Mapogu, bags cutting into her palms, laughing at her mother's generator complaints. She hung up at 12:30 and turned the last corner toward her building. The street was empty. Then it wasn't. A black van at the curb with the side door open. 2 men, large, dark clothing, faces covered, and a small boy between them, one man gripping both his arms from behind, the other trying to push his legs up and into the van while the boy kicked and twisted and screamed in Korean at a frequency that should have brought every light on in the building above them. No lights came on. Nobody came. Sonia's bags hit the ground before she made a conscious decision to put them down. She grabbed the closer man by his collar and yanked with everything she had. He outweighed her by 60 pounds easy, but she had the angle and the surprise and 3 years of accumulated grief that had nowhere useful to go. He lurched backward, lost his grip on the boy. The boy's right arm pulled free, and he immediately bit the other man's hand hard enough to make him curse out loud. The first man recovered faster than she expected. He spun and shoved her into the side of the van so hard the metal dented and her left temple hit the door frame. The world tilted. She tasted blood. She grabbed his jacket again on instinct, clawed at it, felt her nails tear, and did the only thing left she could think of. She screamed. Not a scared scream. Not a help me scream. A sound from somewhere below the ribcage. Full. Enormous. The kind of sound that made dogs bark 3 streets over. A window opened above them. Then another. A security guard's flashlight swept the far end of the street. The 2 men locked eyes over the boy's head. The one Sonia was still half holding jerked free, and both of them ran. The van started moving before the side door was even closed. It swung open, dragged along the road for 20 meters, then clapped shut as the van turned the corner and disappeared. Sonia was on one knee on the wet pavement, hand pressed to her temple, chest heaving. The boy stood in front of her, completely still, not crying. His clothes, she noticed now, were expensive. Dark navy trousers, a structured wool jacket. His face was composed in the way that doesn't come naturally to children. He looked at her the way a person looks at something they've been expecting. "They'll come back," he said. In English. Perfect, unaccented English. "We should go inside." Sonia looked at him. "How old are you?" 7. He picked up one of her fallen grocery bags. "But that's not important right now. If you're still here, drop a comment below and let me know what you think of Sonia so far. Like the video if you want to see what happens next, and subscribe." Sonia's apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building that smelled like cooking oil and somebody's laundry detergent. The elevator was broken 3 days out of 7. She took the stairs with the boy behind her, one hand still pressed to the side of her head, the other carrying the surviving grocery bag. She didn't know why she brought him upstairs. She thought about it later, much later, and still couldn't fully explain it. He was 7. He was alone. And something about the way he'd stood there on the street, collected and watchful in a way no child should be after what just happened to him, made leaving him alone feel wrong. She unlocked the door quietly. Laura was asleep. Except Laura was not asleep. She was sitting cross-legged on the couch under a blanket, tablet on her lap, watching something with headphones in at a volume that suggested she had no idea what quiet meant. She pulled one headphone off when the door opened, looked at her mother's bloody temple, looked at the boy, and made a decision with the speed and certainty that only 7-year-olds are capable of. "Sit here," she told the boy, patting the couch cushion next to her. She said it in Korean. He sat. She handed him half the blanket and put one earbud in his ear. Sonia stood in the doorway of her own apartment watching this for a moment. Then she went to the bathroom, turned on the tap, and looked at herself in the mirror. The cut above her left temple had clotted, but the bruising was already starting, purple edging into the skin around it. She cleaned it with the efficiency of someone who had learned not to make a production out of being hurt. She came back out. Both children were watching the tablet. The boy, she still didn't know his name, was watching with the same stillness he'd had on the street. He wasn't really watching, she realized. He was thinking. "What's your name?" she asked. "June." He didn't look up. "Do you have a phone? Someone I can call?" "No." "June. I need to call someone." "Your parents, My father will find me." Still calm. Still not looking at her. He always does. Laura looked at Sonia with an expression that said he's a little weird, but I like him, which was essentially Laura's entire social philosophy. Sonia called the police. The officer who answered took down her description of the van, the 2 men, the location. He asked her to repeat the partial plate number she'd caught twice. His voice shifted in a way she couldn't quite read, not alarmed exactly, but changed. He told her someone would follow up. He did not say when. She sat in the chair across from the couch and told herself she'd stay awake. She was asleep within 10 minutes. Her phone woke her at 5:47 a.m. Unknown number. She answered on the second ring. The woman on the other end had a voice like a press release. Clipped. Professional. No warmth, no static, no ambient noise behind her at all. "Miss Johnson. This is calling on behalf of Mr. Kong Jae-won. Please don't contact any additional authorities. Mr. Kong is on his way to your address. He asks for 15 minutes of your time. He will explain everything when he arrives." The line went dead. Sonia pulled the phone from her ear and looked at it. Then she looked at the boy asleep on her couch with Laura's SpongeBob blanket pulled up to his chin, and suddenly it landed, the expensive clothes, the unnatural composure, the certainty that his father would find him. She said his full name quietly in her head. Kong Jun. She'd heard of Kong Group. Everybody in Seoul had heard of Kong Group. You couldn't live in the city for 6 years without knowing who Kang Jae-won was. She went to the kitchen and put water on for tea because she needed something to do with her hands. 6 black SUVs arrived at 6:04 a.m. She knew because her building had a security camera feed accessible through a wall-mounted panel by the front door, and she watched all 6 of them pull up in staggered formation on the street below with a focused, unhurried efficiency of people who did this kind of thing every day. 12 men in dark clothing moved to their positions around the building entrance before a single door opened. Then one door opened. Kong Jae-won was tall, mid-30s. The kind of face that was easy to call handsome and harder to call warm. He wore a dark suit that was too good for 6 a.m., which meant he'd been in it all night. He walked toward the building entrance the way people walk when every room they've ever entered has rearranged itself around them. He knocked on her apartment door 4 minutes later. One of his security team knocked, a composed young man who bowed and asked in Korean if Ms. Johnson was present. Sonia opened the door herself. Kang Jae-won looked at her, the bruise on her temple, the convenience store uniform she was still wearing, the cup of tea in her hand, and something moved across his face too fast to name. He composed it immediately. Ms. Johnson. His English was precise and studied. Thank you for what you did last night. Your son's on the couch, she said. She stepped back to let him in. He walked past her and saw June. And for the 4 seconds before he remembered himself, Kang Jae-won was just a father. The suit and the composure and the 6 SUVs outside didn't exist. He crossed to the couch in 4 steps, crouched in front of his son, touched his face, checked his arms. June woke up, looked at his father, and said something quiet in Korean. Kang exhaled. Slow. He held the back of June's head for a moment with one hand. Then he straightened, turned, sat at Sonia's kitchen table without being invited, which she noticed, and pulled out a card. He slid it across the table toward her. She looked at it, looked at him. Whatever figure you feel is appropriate, he said. Kang Group will honor it. For what you did. Sonia picked up the card and slid it back across the table. Kang looked at the card, then at her. I don't want money, she said. I want to know who those men were and whether my daughter is safe in this building tonight. He studied her for a moment. The men were professionals, he said. Hired. They were not after you specifically. They have my wallet. I dropped it on the street. Which means they have my address. A pause. Brief. He hadn't considered that yet, or he had, and the implications were still landing. Miss Johnson. Sonia. Sonia. He said it like he was filing it somewhere precise. I need to explain some things to you. Not all of them, but some. I'm listening. Drop a comment below. Are you Team Sonia or are you already watching Kang different? Like the video and subscribe. His brother's name was Kang Jae-sung. Kang Jae-won said the name the way you say the name of something that has been hurting you for so long you've stopped expecting it to stop. He explained it plainly, the way Sonia suspected he explained most things facts first, feeling buried. Their father, the founder of Kang Group, had died 4 years ago. The board had voted Jae-won into the chairman and CEO position, passing over Jae-sung, who was older and had expected it, and had been building toward it his entire career. Jae-sung had spent the years since then executing a slow, methodical campaign to take Kang Group apart from the outside, hostile investor pressure, regulatory complaints, strategic leaks to the press. When that hadn't been enough, he'd escalated. June had been taken to use as leverage. Sign over controlling shares of Kang Group to Jae-sung's holding company or the boy's location would not be disclosed. That was the message delivered to Kang's personal attorney at midnight. Your brother did this, Sonia said. Someone working with my brother. Directly, it was a hired operation. And how did they know where your son was? His route, his schedule. Kang's jaw moved slightly. Someone inside my organization gave them that information. So someone on your own team sold your son. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Sonia wrapped both hands around her mug. And you don't know who? Not yet. Which means whoever it is knows your son is missing and knows you've been looking for him all night and is waiting to see what you do next. Yes. And if you take June back into your world right now, back into your house or your office or wherever he normally is, and the mole is still there. Yes. He said it quietly. You understand the problem. She did understand it. She understood it and she did not like where understanding it was leading. Kang looked around her apartment the same way he'd looked at it when he first walked in, not with disdain, something more complicated than that. He looked at Laura's drawings taped to the wall above the TV. A drawing of Sonia, recognizable by the hair. A drawing of a man Sonia hadn't looked at directly in 2 years. David. I need somewhere unexpected, Kang said. Somewhere not connected to me. For 3 days. For at most. Until I identify who it is. No. Miss John. Sonia. And no. You need to hear me clearly. I have a 7-year-old daughter and an apartment and a job. I am not a safe house. You're right. I apologize for asking. He stood. His composure was complete, which somehow made it worse. I'll make other arrangements. He went to the couch, said something to June. June stood, straightened the blanket neatly, folded it, actually, corners aligned, and handed it to Laura, who had appeared from her bedroom in her school pajamas eating a biscuit and regarding Kang Jae-won with total calm. Is that your dad? Laura asked June in Korean. Yes, said June. He's tall. She took another bite of her biscuit. Kang looked at Laura. Something in his face shifted, just slightly, just for a second. He looked at Sonia. My son hasn't spoken that easily to another child in over a year, he said. His mother died 18 months ago. The apartment went quiet. Sonia looked at June, who was watching her with those careful eyes, waiting to see what she did with the information. She thought about what she was doing. She thought about Laura and the building's broken elevator and the dropped wallet with her address on the ID inside. She thought about the fact that whether she agreed to this or not, she was already in it, because those men already knew where she lived. 3 days, she said. And you're going to answer some questions for me. What questions? About my husband. The shift in him was small, but it was there. Something behind the eyes, some recalibration. He knew the name David Johnson. She'd been watching for it, and she saw it, and they both knew she saw it. 3 days, he agreed. He did not agree to the questions. She noticed. The security team Kong placed outside was invisible to anyone who didn't know to look. 2 men at the building entrance who looked like residents. One on the roof. One in a car on the street that changed position every 4 hours. Sonia knew they were there because Kong told her. She would not have spotted them herself. He worked from her kitchen table. This was strange in ways that accumulated. Kong Jae-won, the 14th wealthiest person in South Korea according to a magazine Sonia had once seen in a waiting room, at her table with a laptop and 2 phones and a coffee he'd made himself because she'd pointed at the jar of instant and said, "Knock yourself out." His security team lead, a quiet, composed man named Woo Sung-min who communicated mostly in nods, checked in with him every 90 minutes. June and Laura occupied the couch with the efficiency of children who have decided they're friends and require no adult facilitation. They argued about everything. What to watch, what to eat, who was right about whether Jenga was better than cards. June argued with data and logic. Laura argued with volume and confidence. They were evenly matched. Sonia went to her shift. She came back at midnight. Kong was still at the table. She made tea. She put a cup next to his laptop without asking. He looked at it. He looked at her. He said thank you. Your company, she said, sitting across from him. How long has your brother been trying to take it down? Officially? For years. He closed the laptop halfway. Actually? His whole life. That's a long time to hate someone. He doesn't hate me. He considered it. He needs to beat me. There's a difference. What did your father say about him? When he was alive? The question landed differently than she intended. Something in Kang's posture changed, a small collapse somewhere he'd been holding tense. My father said Jae-sung was brilliant but impatient. He said I was steadier. He paused. He meant it as a compliment for me. Jae-sung heard it as an insult to him. He wasn't wrong to hear it that way. Sonia looked at him. You feel sorry for him. He's still my brother. He tried to kidnap your son. Yes. Simple. No conflict in the word, but she could see the conflict somewhere beneath it. They sat with that for a moment. Tell me about your husband, Kong said. Sonia put her mug down. That's not how this works, she said. You first. You said you'd answer my questions. I said we would talk. You knew his name. When I mentioned David. You knew it before I gave you context. Why? He looked at her for a long time. The kind of look that is actually a decision happening in real time. Not tonight, he said. There are things I need to verify before I can speak accurately. She held his gaze. He didn't look away. She had a feeling he hadn't looked away from much in his life. Tomorrow night, she said. He nodded once. She took her tea to her room. She sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the photo of David and then at the folded incident report in the drawer. She didn't take it out. She just looked at the drawer. Comment below, do you think Kong knows more than he's saying? Like and subscribe to make sure you're here when the truth about David drops. The second day was quiet in a way that felt like held breath. Kang's team rotated shifts without appearing to. Kang himself stayed at the table through the morning, 2 phones and a laptop running in parallel, making calls in Korean in a voice low enough that Sonia caught tone but not content. He had the particular focused stillness of someone who has trained themselves to work through crisis, because crisis is a condition of their life, not an exception to it. Laura made him move his laptop once. She needed the table for a school project. She explained this to him directly, in Korean, without preamble. He looked at her, looked at the project materials she was unloading from her backpack, and moved to the kitchen counter without a word. June watched this from the couch and said nothing, but something in his face eased slightly. Like a person who'd been carrying something setting it down without making a show of it. Sonia noticed because she noticed everything about both of those children in a way she couldn't entirely explain. Laura was hers, that was its own category of knowing. But June was something she found herself reading without meaning to. The way he held stillness. The way he watched his father. Like he was monitoring something. Like he was waiting for a specific variable to change. She went to her shift. She came back at 12:45 a.m. The building entrance looked normal. The man sitting in the car on the street had shifted position. Kang's light was still on through the window from the street. He was on the phone when she came in. He held up one finger without turning around, finished the call in 30 seconds, set the phone down. She was at the refrigerator before he spoke. I need to tell you something, he said. About the men from the other night. She closed the refrigerator. Turned around. They traced your wallet, he said. We confirmed it. They have a physical address. I know that. I told you that the first morning. What I didn't know that morning, what my team has confirmed in the last 6 hours, is that they haven't moved on it. He looked at her steadily. Which means they're not coming back for June. They already know June is with me. Something settled cold in her stomach. Then why are they still watching this address? Because Jae-sung is patient. He knows that if June is safe and I know who took him, the next thing I do is look for the person inside my organization who gave them the information. He wants to see if I find that person before he can neutralize them. If he can get to the mole first. He cuts the evidence trail. Yes. So we're bait. You're bait, he said. I'm the reason they're watching you. Sonia looked at him. I can move you, he said. Tonight. A hotel, a private property, somewhere with full security, no exposure. You and Laura. And my job. Don't say you'll handle it. He paused. I was going to say I'll explain that option and let you decide. She looked at him for a moment. Then she pulled out the chair across from him and sat down. Tell me about David, she said. You said tomorrow. It's tomorrow. He looked at his phone. Then he set it face down on the table. What I'm going to tell you, he said, I should have told you 3 years ago. I didn't. I'm not going to excuse that or explain it away. I'm telling you that first so you have context for everything else. Sonia sat completely still. David was a logistics manager at a subsidiary facility in Incheon, Kong said. About 8 months before his death, he identified a pattern in the waste processing records that didn't match the facility's environmental compliance filings. Chemical waste was being routed through a third-party contractor and disposed of illegally. It was a cost reduction measure. It saved the facility approximately 400 million won annually. Who ordered it? Her voice was flat. A senior executive named Oh Byung-chul, division head for that cluster of subsidiaries. And David reported it. Internally. To Oh Byung-chul's deputy, who passed it upward. David was told the issue was being investigated and that he should continue his work and let the process proceed. And then he died. 14 weeks after he filed the report. Yes. The kitchen was completely quiet. Outside, a motorbike passed on the street below. Sonia didn't blink. The facility accident, she said, was not an accident. The words landed and Sonia did not move. She sat with them. She picked them up and turned them over and looked at all of their faces, and then she set them down. You knew this, she said. I found out 6 months after David died. An internal audit flagged financial irregularities in Oh Byung-chul's division. The investigation into those irregularities uncovered what David had originally reported. And it uncovered that Oh had decided David was a risk and had arranged for the incident. Arranged. She said the word like it was something she was examining. He had my husband killed. Yes. And what happened to Oh Byung-chul? King's pause was measured. He was dismissed from Kong Group. He signed a confidentiality agreement. He was required to leave Korea. Sonia looked at him. She looked at him for a long time. That's it. At the time, I did not have evidence that would survive a criminal proceeding. The audit findings were internal. Taking it to prosecutors without a paper trail that held up would have been embarrassing for Kong Group. Would have failed, he said. And potentially given Oh Byung-chul grounds to. Don't. Her voice was quiet and exact. Don't give me the legal architecture of why it was complicated. A man killed my husband. And you paid him to leave the country and stay quiet. Yes. He said it without moving. That is what happened. And you said nothing to me. I didn't know how to find you. By the time I was here, I was in Seoul. I was working 12-hour shifts 2 bus stops from the Kong Group regional office, and you didn't know how to find me. He had no answer for that. He didn't try to manufacture one. Sonia pushed back from the table. She went to her room. She closed the door. She sat on the edge of the bed. She pressed both palms flat on her knees and looked at the floor and breathed in and out 4 times, slow, the way her mother had taught her when she was 9 and overwhelmed. She did not cry. She would later, privately, in a way that belonged entirely to herself. Not now. She looked at the drawer with the incident report. She opened it, took out the folded paper, unfolded it on her lap. She'd read it so many times she could have recited it. Structural failure. Routine inspection. Unfortunate. She looked at the words and thought about David's face, the particular expression he made when something wasn't right, eyes slightly narrowed, head tilted, like he was listening to a frequency just outside normal range. He had heard something wrong. He had tried to do the right thing. And they had killed him for it. She refolded the paper, put it back in the drawer, closed it. Then she went back to the kitchen. Kong was still at the table. He hadn't moved. She stood in the doorway. Who else knew, she said. He looked up. About David. About what Oh Byung-chul did. Who else at Kong Group knew? A small number of people on the audit team. The head of my legal division. Your current head of security. Woo Sung-min. Did he know? Something changed in Kang's face. Slight but real. Sung-min was brought into that investigation as part of the security review, he said carefully. Yes. He knew. Sonia nodded once. Went to her room. Closed the door. Kang sat at the table with that answer and what it might mean, alone in Sonia's kitchen at 1:30 a.m., and he understood, for the first time fully, why she'd been reading that incident report. She'd been waiting. She'd been doing it alone. And she was better at it than any of them had given her credit for. We're getting to the part where everything connects. Comment what you think about Kang right now. Does he deserve forgiveness? Like the video and subscribe. Sonia did not speak to Kang about David again the next morning. She made breakfast. She got Laura ready for school, except Laura was not going to school because Kang's security lead had quietly advised against it and Sonia had agreed without discussion because she was picking her fights. Laura received this news with negotiating energy that Sonia did not have capacity for at 7 a.m., and it ended with Laura getting an extra hour of tablet time and June teaching her to play baduk on a board he'd found in the back of a closet. They sat on the floor. June explained the rules once, concisely, with the patience of someone twice his age. Laura listened with one eye on the tablet. Then she started playing and took his third piece inside 8 minutes and looked at him with an expression of pure competitive satisfaction. June looked at the board. Then at her. You understood that faster than I expected. I understand most things fast, Laura said pleasantly. Kang watched this from across the room. He looked at Sonia. She was at the counter, not looking at either of them, and he said nothing. Later in the afternoon, while both children napped, Laura horizontal and boneless on her bed, June sitting upright in the corner of the couch, asleep with military posture, Sonia came and sat across from Kang at the kitchen table. Woo Sung-min, she said. I know. He had access to June's schedule. His route. His security detail rotation. I know, Sonia. And he's outside your building right now. She watched his face. Your son's route was compromised from the inside, and the person most likely to have done it is currently standing 50 meters from your son. I can't move on him without evidence, Kang said. If I pull him in now and I'm wrong, I've burned my head of security and tipped off whoever it actually is. And if I'm right and I pull him in without evidence, he walks and disappears. Then we need evidence. Yes. She leaned back in her chair. She looked at the ceiling, the water stain in the left corner that she'd been meaning to report to the landlord for 4 months. She looked at it and thought. My husband kept backups, she said. Kang looked at her. David was methodical. He backed everything up. Work documents, personal documents, everything. He had an external hard drive, one I've never looked at because I didn't have a reason to look at it. She held Kang's gaze. The files he found. The ones he reported. If he backed those up before he reported them, before Oh Byung-chul knew he was a risk, they would be time-stamped. Original files. Not the version that went through Kang Group's internal system. Kang was very still. Where is the drive? In a shoebox under my bed. They looked at each other. Sonia. If what David found is on that drive, she said, and it shows not just the illegal dumping, but when it was reported and to whom, that's a direct chain from Oh Byung-chul's order to David's death. That's not an internal audit finding. That's prosecutable. It could also connect to Jae-sung, Kang said. He was thinking out loud now, the way people think when pieces are arriving in real time. Oh Byung-chul didn't just work for Kang Group. He was removed from Kang Group and silence purchased. If he went to work for Jae-sung afterward, and I believe he did, then the communication trail between them may go back further than Jae-sung's recent campaign against me. It may connect the chemical dumping, David's death, and June's kidnapping as a single continuous operation. The room was quiet. That's your brother, Sonia said. Yes. And what your brother did, the dumping, the cover-up, David, she stopped. Started again. That's not just about you and him and who gets the company. That's about 17 families of workers at that facility who were told their respiratory symptoms were unrelated to their environment. I looked them up. After David died, I found the workers' compensation filings. She looked at Kang. They never collected. Kang's jaw tightened. I know, he said. Do you know because someone told you, or do you know because you saw the filings? I saw the filings. And you let the settlement offer for those families get buried when Oh Byung-chul was dismissed. The attorneys advised. Kang. It was the first time she'd used his name without the honorific. He registered it. Those people worked in the building where my husband died. Whatever you do with your brother, whatever this ends up being, those families are part of the condition. You understand me? He looked at her. Steady. Yes. She got up. Went to her room. Came back with a shoebox. Set it on the table. She lifted the lid. Under David's watch and his Lagos FC keychain and the immigration documents was a black external hard drive in a padded sleeve. She set it on the table between them. You open it, she said. I want to watch your face. Kong connected it to his laptop. It took 11 minutes to find the folder. David Johnson had labeled it with the particular dry practicality that Sonia recognized as completely his, KG Incheon, waste routing discrepancy, personal copy. The folder contained 43 files. Scanned documents, photographs of physical records, an audio file, David's voice, recorded on his phone, clear as a window, describing what he'd found, naming Oh Byung-chul's deputy, noting the date he filed the internal report and who received it. Kang played 20 seconds of the audio and stopped it. He sat back. He pressed 2 fingers against his mouth and looked at the ceiling. This is everything, he said. I know. Sonia was looking at the laptop screen. At David's handwriting in the file names. Sonia. His voice was different now. Stripped of something. I am sorry. For what happened to David. For what I didn't do afterward. I'm telling you that not because it changes anything or because I expect it to. I'm telling you because it's true and I should have said it to you 3 years ago and I didn't. She looked at him. At the lines around his eyes that hadn't been there in the photos she'd seen of him from 4 years ago. At his hands flat on the table the way hands go flat when the person has run out of things to do with them. I know, she said. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't absolution. It was just acknowledgement, the kind between 2 people who are both too tired for performance. She picked up the hard drive. So what now, she said. His phone buzzed. He looked at it. His face changed. He turned the phone toward her. A message from Woo Sung-min, sent to an encrypted channel that Kang's tech team had been quietly monitoring for 48 hours at Kang's request. The message was not to Kong. It was a contact at Shin Industries, Kang Jae-sung's operation, and it said, in Korean that Kong translated for her in a flat voice. They have the drive. Move before morning. We are at the breaking point. Comment right now, did you see Sung-min coming? Like this video and subscribe and keep watching. Kang made 3 calls in 4 minutes. The first call lasted 40 seconds. The second lasted 90. The third was 12 words and then a hang-up. When he was done, he set both phones on the table and looked at Sonia with the particular focus of someone who has shifted from thought into action and cannot afford the space between them. I need you to listen to me carefully, he said. I'm listening. Sung-min doesn't know we've been monitoring that channel. He thinks he has until morning to act. That gives us 6 hours to do 2 things simultaneously: remove you, Laura, and June from this building without alerting Sung-min that we know, and get this drive into the hands of 2 people I trust before Jae-sung can move against it. Who are the 2 people? One is my CFO. The other is a prosecutor at the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office who has been building a case against Jae-sung's financial irregularities for 18 months. What's on this drive connects to that case directly. If she gets it before morning, she can move on it independently of Kong Group. It becomes a criminal matter, not a corporate one. Meaning Jae-sung can't settle it internally. Meaning it goes to a place where neither of us can touch it. He paused. And Oh Byung-chul comes back into jurisdiction. Sonia held the hard drive. She looked at it. If this goes to the prosecutor, she said, what happens to the information about the workers at the Incheon facility? It's part of the same filing. Their records go in. And the families. Their compensation. I'll make a formal commitment tonight. In writing, separate from any legal proceeding, independent of outcome. Whatever happens in court, those families are compensated. I'll draft it before we leave this apartment. She looked at him. He met her eyes. No performance in it. Okay, she said. I also need something from you. What? The audio recording. David's voice, describing what he found, naming Oh Byung-chul. That file, specifically, the prosecutor will need it authenticated. Meaning you will need to confirm that it's David's voice, that the drive was in your possession, that it came from his personal files. I have to testify. To the prosecutor first. Formally in court only if it proceeds that far. But yes. She breathed in once, slow. You understand what you're asking me, she said. Yes. You're asking me to put my name in front of the same organization that arranged my husband's death. You're asking me to be on record. You'll have full legal protection. My attorney, the prosecutors. Kong. She held his gaze. I'm not saying no. I'm making sure you understand what you're asking. He looked at her for a moment. I understand what I'm asking. Good. She stood. Give me 10 minutes to wake Laura. Getting 3 children, June, Laura, and Sonia's upstairs neighbor's 12-year-old who had unfortunately seen 2 of Kang's security team in the stairwell and needed to be managed with a calm conversation and a bribe of frozen dumplings. Out of a building without alerting the man stationed at the front entrance required the particular kind of coordination that looks effortless from the outside and is anything but. Kang's second security lead, a woman named Park Ji-na who communicated exclusively through small economy of motion and had a quality of absolute stillness that made Sonia immediately trust her, came in through the building's service entrance, which backed onto an alley. She had a vehicle at the alley exit. 3 minutes, she told Kang. That was the window. Sonia packed one bag. She did it in 8 minutes, Laura's medication, both their passports, the hard drive, David's watch. She did not take the incident report. She'd been carrying it for 3 years, and she didn't need it anymore. She stood in the doorway of the apartment and looked at it. The water stain on the ceiling. Laura's drawings on the wall. The table where Kang Jae-won had worked for 2 days with a jar of instant coffee and 2 phones like a man trying to hold together something he'd spent his whole life building. She turned off the light and closed the door. The move through the building took exactly the 3 minutes Gina had estimated. Down the back stairwell, through the service door, into the alley, into the vehicle, a plain gray van that looked like a delivery vehicle, before Sung-min's sight line from the front entrance could rotate to cover the alley. Laura, half asleep, wedged between Sonia and the van wall, informed June that this was the most exciting night of her entire life. June, completely awake, considered this and said it was probably in his top 3. Laura said top 3 wasn't enough and June said he'd had a complicated 7 years. Sonia looked at both of them in the dark of the moving van and felt something crack open in her chest that she didn't have a word for. Not grief exactly. Something adjacent to it, and also its opposite. Kang was in the front seat. He turned around once to check on them. His eyes went to June first, then Laura, then Sonia. He turned back without speaking. They were taken to a property in the Songbukdong Hills. Not Kang Group connected, a private residence owned by Kang's CFO, Han Min-suk. A small contained man in his late 50s who opened the door in a tracksuit and took in the full situation with the equanimity of someone who'd been managing Kang's crises for 20 years. He took the hard drive from Sonia directly. She held it 1 extra second before releasing it. He looked at her. Mrs. Johnson, your husband was a good man. I knew him briefly, in a meeting he attended early in his time with us. He asked the kind of questions that make the people in the room uncomfortable. He paused. That is not a criticism. She nodded. Han took the drive to a room at the back of the house. Kang went with him. Laura was installed on a sofa with blankets by a housekeeper who appeared without instruction. June sat beside her, arms crossed, watching the door Kang had gone through. Sonia stood in the hallway. Gina appeared at her elbow. Miss Johnson, we need to talk about what happens in the next 90 minutes. Tell me. Sung-min will check the apartment before midnight and find it empty. When he does, he'll report to whoever he's reporting to that you've moved. They'll know Kang has been made aware of the message. At that point, Jae-sung's operation either accelerates or dissolves, depending on whether they believe the drive has already moved to the prosecutor. Has it? Han is transmitting the files now. The drive goes to the prosecutor in person in 40 minutes. Physical meeting at her residence. She paused. At that point, the only material thing still unresolved is Sung-min himself. What happens to him? That depends on whether he runs or waits. What do you think he'll do? Gina considered this with her characteristic stillness. He's disciplined. He'll wait to see how the situation develops before deciding. If he waits long enough, he loses the option to run. You sound like you're hoping he waits. I am, Gina said simply. He was one of our best people for 9 years. I'd like him to face what he did properly. At 11:40 p.m., Sonia was sitting at Han Min-suk's kitchen table when Kang came back into the room. It's sent, he said. The prosecutor received the files 40 minutes ago. She's reviewing them now. She expects to make an initial filing before 6 a.m. He sat down. It's done. Sonia looked at him. Is it? He understood the question. Jae-sung's operation will be dismantled. Oh Byung-chul will be brought back into jurisdiction. The prosecutor has international mechanism through the case she's already building. It will take time. It won't be clean. But yes. He held her gaze. David's death will be part of the official record. She nodded once. She looked at her hands on the table. He would have kept going, she said. It wasn't a question. I know, Kang said. If they hadn't, she stopped. He would have made it a thing. Gone public if the internal process failed. He wouldn't have let it go. She looked up. He was like that. I know, Kang said again. Softer. How do you know? Because the audit team, when they pulled his original report, found 3 copies in 3 different locations. He had already anticipated that the internal process might fail. He looked at her steadily. He was protecting the evidence. He just ran out of time. The kitchen was quiet. Laura appeared in the doorway in her pajamas. Mom. June says the board game in the closet is go. Is that the same as Baduk? Ask him, Sonia said. I did. He said yes and also that I'm going to lose. Is that true? Probably not, Sonia said. Laura disappeared. They heard her telling June he was going to lose and June responding that statistically that was very unlikely. A board game box opened. Pieces scattered on a floor. Sonia almost smiled. The board meeting is next. The confrontation. The choice. Comment what you think Sonia is going to do with that choice. Like and subscribe. The emergency board meeting of Kong Group's global directors was called for 9 a.m. the following morning. Kong sent the summons at 6 a.m. 12 directors, 3 attending via video. His legal team was already at the building. Han Min-suk arrived at the Kong Group headquarters tower in Uedo at 7:30 with 2 attorneys and a woman from the prosecutor's office named Choi Deun, who was 34 years old, who had been building a case against Kong Jae-sung for 18 months, and who had read David Johnson's audio file 3 times in a row at her kitchen table at midnight and then sat in silence for a while before she started making calls. Kong called his brother at 7:45. He told him there was a matter requiring his attention at the board level. He said it was related to the current succession structure and shareholder alignment. He used language that was specific enough to be credible and vague enough that Jae-sung couldn't calculate exactly what was happening without coming to see. Jae-sung agreed to connect by video at 9. Kong knew that meant Jae-sung had already been told something was wrong and was coming to watch what Kong did next. That was fine. That was the point. Sonia asked Kang that morning if she needed to be there. He told her no. Then he told her yes, but only if she wanted to be, because her presence wasn't legally required, but it was something he thought she had earned the right to. She thought about it. I'll be there, she said. Gina drove them to the building separately. Laura and June stayed at the residence with Han's housekeeper and specific instructions that Laura was not allowed to teach June any card games because she had been inventing rules the night before and Han's housekeeper had been drafted as a third player under false pretenses. The Kong Group boardroom was on the 42nd floor. Glass walls. A long table that could seat 20. A view of the Han River that on a clear morning looked like a painting and on this particular morning looked gray and real and close. Sonia sat to the left of Kang's chair. Choi Deun sat at the opposite end of the table from the board. She had a laptop and a hard copy of the filed documents and the quality of total calm that belongs to people who have been waiting for a specific moment for a long time and have now arrived in it. Woo Sung-min was in the room. He had received the summons as head of security and come in without hesitation, which told Sonia something about either his nerve or his calculation. He sat against the wall with 2 other security personnel. He registered Sonia's presence with a look that lasted 1 second, absorbed it, and returned his gaze to the room. She didn't look away from him. He looked away first. The board convened. Kong opened with 3 sentences. There were matters of governance and legal accountability before the board that required immediate attention, that this meeting superseded normal scheduling for reasons that would become clear, and that a representative from the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office was present in an official capacity. The room shifted. Choi Deun spoke for 11 minutes. She covered the Incheon facility, the illegal chemical waste routing, Oh Byung-chul's order and the internal Kong Group report filed by David Johnson in November 2020. The circumstances of David's death 14 months after he filed the report. The communication trail between Oh Byung-chul and a holding company registered to Kong Jae-sung's personal portfolio. The financial transfers between that holding company and the operation that hired the men who attempted to take June. The room was completely silent. On the video screen, 3 overseas directors. And one other connection, Kong Jae-sung, watching from somewhere with good lighting and a neutral wall behind him. He had the controlled face of someone managing a very large response behind a very practiced surface. Choi Deun finished. She set her pen down. Kong looked at the video screen. He looked at his brother. He didn't say anything accusatory. He didn't raise his voice. He said, in Korean, quietly enough that the room had to lean slightly to hear, "This is over, Young. Whatever you decide to do next, this part is over." Jae-sung looked at him through the screen. His face was a completed equation. Cold, precise, resolved. He reached forward and disconnected. The security chief in Jae-sung's operation, who had been on a separate video feed monitoring the meeting, disconnected 30 seconds later. Woo Sung-min stood up from his chair against the wall. Gina, who had been standing 3 feet from him the entire meeting, put one hand on his arm. Not forceful, just present. He looked at her hand, then at her face. He sat back down. The board voted within 40 minutes. Formal cooperation with the prosecutor's office. Full disclosure of all documents related to the Incheon facility. Suspension of any Kong Group-affiliated operations linked to Jae-sung's holding company. An independent investigative committee for the facility worker compensation claims. and on a motion from a director named Lim Cheol-soo, who had been on the board since Kang's father's era and who made the motion with the deliberateness of someone who had been waiting to make it. A formal record acknowledging that David Johnson had correctly identified an illegal operation, had reported it through proper channels, and had received no protection from the organization to which he'd made that report. It was a single paragraph. It would go into the official board minutes. It would exist in the record permanently. Sonia sat in the boardroom chair and read it on the screen when it was projected for approval. She read it once. Then she looked at the window and the Greyhound River outside it. She didn't cry in the boardroom. She wasn't going to give that to this room. But she held David's watch under the table in her right hand, her thumb pressed against the back of the case, and she said his name once inside her head and felt the ground shift slightly in a way that grief does sometimes when something is finally put right. Afterward, in the hallway outside the boardroom, a Kong Group attorney found her. Young, careful, trained in the particular blend of professionalism and implication that means a large organization wants something. He introduced himself and then placed a document on the table beside her. He explained it clearly. A non-disclosure agreement. If she signed, Kong Group would manage all legal proceedings relating to the Incheon facility and David's death internally and through the already filed criminal case. She would receive a formal wrongful death settlement. She could return to her life. Or she walked the hard drive's contents out of the building. She spoke to the journalists who had been camped at the Kong Group lobby entrance for 2 hours since someone leaked that something was happening. She made David's story public property. Made the chemical dumping a national conversation. Made the 17 families visible in a way that Kong Group's managed legal process would not. She held the document. The attorney waited. Kong came down the hallway and stopped when he saw her with the document. He looked at the attorney. He looked at Sonia. He said nothing. She looked at him. If I sign this, she said. I won't try to stop you if you don't. He said it clean. No performance. If I sign this, the families still get compensated. I made that commitment in writing last night. It's independent of this document. And the criminal case proceeds. Choi Doon filed this morning. That process doesn't require your signature or mine. It proceeds. She looked at the document. She looked at the window at the end of the hallway, the same gray river, farther now small. She thought about David. About what he'd done and why he'd done it and what it had cost. She thought about 17 families with unresolved compensation filings. She thought about Laura and June on a floor in Songbukdong playing baduk and arguing about the rules. She thought about what David would have done. She thought about what she needed to do. They were not the same thing. And that was all right. She picked up the pen. She picked up the pen. But what did she sign, and what did she demand in exchange? Comment your guess right now. Like and subscribe. She signed it. But before she put the pen to the line, she looked at the attorney and said, I need 4 additions to this document before I sign anything. The attorney's composure held. Barely. She told him the 4 things. The first was the written compensation commitment for the 17 families, formally annexed into the agreement so it was legally binding and not a side arrangement that could be quietly walked back. The second was a named acknowledgement, in the settlement documentation, not buried in appendix language, of David Chukwemeka Johnson as the Kong Group employee whose internal report initiated the identification of the illegal operation at the Incheon facility. His name on the record. His action on the record. The third was a provision requiring Kong Group's mandatory cooperation with any future inquiry by the prosecutor's office related to the Incheon matter. They could not use this settlement as grounds to limit that cooperation. The fourth was that the journalist currently standing in the Kong Group lobby, a reporter from JBC named Kim Soo-yeon who had been covering corporate accountability for 11 years and who Sonia had, before entering the boardroom, sent a message to from Gina's phone, would receive a prepared statement from Kong Group's communications office by noon confirming the basic facts, the facility, the dumping, the internal report, the criminal filing. Not from Sonia. From them. On record. They could manage how much they said. They couldn't manage whether they said anything. The attorney looked at the 4 additions. He excused himself and made a call. He came back in 7 minutes. He said yes to all 4. She signed it. She walked out of Kong Group headquarters at 11:42 a.m. The sky had cleared. Seoul in late afternoon had that particular thin winter light that makes every surface look like it's made of something harder than it is. She stood on the wide step outside the main entrance and breathed in the cold air, which smelled like river and exhaust and someone's streetcar tteokbokki from the corner, and felt not good, not finished exactly, but different. Like a door had been shut that had been left open for 3 years, and the draft was gone. Gina was at the curb with the car. Sonia got in. Laura and June were on the floor of Han Min-suk's living room when she arrived. Laura had apparently won 3 consecutive games of Baduk, at which point June had accused her of improvising rules, to which Laura had said improvising was a strategy, and they had arrived at a détente involving a snack break. Laura looked up when Sonia came in. She had the particular radar of children who know when their parent has been through something, even when the parent hasn't changed their face. She got up and walked over and hugged Sonia around the middle without saying anything. Just held on. Sonia put her hand on the back of Laura's head and held on back. June sat on the floor and looked at the Baduk board, and with the discretion of a 7-year-old who had been through more than most adults, he began resetting the pieces. Kong came 2 hours later. He came alone, which surprised her. He stood in the hallway of Han's house and looked like a man who had been running hard for 72 hours and had just stopped and was discovering how tired he was. "It's done," he said. "I know. Sung-min is in custody. He's cooperating. He'll give us the full connection to Jae-sung's operation, the kidnapping, the Incheon directive, all of it." "Okay." He looked at her. "You got everything you asked for in the agreement." "I know. I was there." A breath of something moved across his face. Almost like humor. Almost. "What will you do now?" he said. It was a real question. She could hear it, not conversational, not diplomatic. Actual. "I don't know yet," she said. "I have a paralegal certification program I keep paying the deposit on and then deferring. I'll probably stop deferring it." She looked at him. "Laura's settled in her school. I'm not leaving Seoul." He nodded. "I should." He stopped. "There are things I should have done differently. Not just with David. With the way I handled." He stopped again. He was not good at this. She could see him being not good at it and trying anyway, which was its own thing. "Kong," she said. He looked at her. "I know," she said. "We're not going to keep going over it. What happened happened. David is David. You did what you did, and I understand why, and I don't forgive the cover-up, and I'm not going to pretend I do. But I also know that what you did in that boardroom today wasn't nothing." He held her gaze. "The families," she said. "The 4 things I asked for. The record with David's name in it." She looked at him. That was the point. That's what he would have wanted. "What do you want?" Kong said. She thought about it. "To finish my certification. To get Laura to stop hustling 7-year-olds at Baduk. To eat a meal I didn't buy at midnight on the way home from a double shift." She looked at him. Normal things. He almost smiled. It was the first time she'd seen it, not the controlled professional expression, not the father's relief, this other thing. Brief. Real. "June likes her," he said. "Your daughter. Laura likes everyone who'll play games with her. She's not particular. June is particular." He said it simply, like it was a fact. "He doesn't like many people." She let that sit between them. She didn't move it. "Thank you," he said. "For what you did on the street that night. And for," he gestured slightly, which for Kong Jae-won was the equivalent of a long sentence. "Go home," she said. "Take your son home." He nodded. He moved toward the door. He stopped with his hand on the frame. "The paralegal program," he said, without turning around. "If you need any documentation of prior relevant experience, navigating a criminal proceeding, conducting an evidential review, negotiating a corporate legal agreement." Kong. He stopped. "Go home." He left. 3 months later, Sonia Johnson was at her kitchen table at 9 p.m. with a property law textbook open and a highlighter she kept losing under the pages and Laura's half-finished homework on the other end of the table. The water stain on the ceiling was gone. She'd called the landlord. It had taken 2 weeks, but she'd called. The apartment was the same apartment. She hadn't moved. It was hers, and she knew it, and that was enough. She was reading a case study in the textbook about fiduciary duty when her phone lit up on the table next to her mug. A message. No name. The contact was saved simply as K. The board approved the Workers' Compensation Fund today. All 847 beneficiaries across the 17 families. First payments processed. Thought you should know. She looked at it. She put the phone back down. She picked up the highlighter and found her place in the case study. Across the table, Laura, who had been pretending to do math homework for 20 minutes, looked up. "Mom. June says his dad taught him Baduk when he was 5. She tilted her head. "Do you think he cheated?" "When he was teaching me. Because some of those rules." "Laura. Some of them felt invented. Go to sleep. It's 9 p.m. Then do your homework." Laura looked at the math page. She looked back at Sonia. "Is everything okay?" she asked. Sonia looked at her daughter. At the particular direct quality of Laura's attention that she'd had since she was 2, the way she looked at things fully, no deflection, taking the whole picture in. David's face in miniature. David's way of looking at what was actually in front of him. "Yes," Sonia said. And it was. Not perfectly. Not without what was missing. But yes, solid ground, real light, work to do, her daughter across the table, a life that was fully, finally, stubbornly, irreducibly hers. She went back to the textbook. Her phone lit up one more time. A second message from K. Oh, Byung-chul was formally extradited this morning. He lands in Seoul on Friday. Sonia read it. She set the phone face down. She picked up the highlighter. She underlined the sentence she'd been on before Laura interrupted her, pressed the cap back on, and kept reading. Outside, Seoul moved the way it always did, constant, indifferent, enormous. Somewhere across the city, a man who had walked free for 3 years was on a plane coming back to face what he'd done. Somewhere in Songbuk-dong, a 7-year-old boy with his father's composure and his own private genius was probably awake at 9 p.m. reading something he wasn't supposed to be reading yet, adding variables to equations the adults around him didn't know he was running. And at her kitchen table, under a ceiling that no longer leaked, Sonia Johnson kept reading. She had a lot to learn. She was not afraid of that. She had done harder things. She had done the hardest thing. She had carried the truth alone for 3 years, in a shoebox, under her bed, without knowing what it was, and when the moment came she had known exactly what to do with it. David had trusted her to know. She always had. The only question left, was she ready for what June had seen and never told his father? That's the end of the story, but Sonia's world is not finished. If you want to know what June knows, comment, tell ME below, and let's see if we bring it back. If this story moved you, like the video, share it with someone who needs a Sonia in their life, and subscribe to Lily's Afro-Korean Mafia Tales so you never miss stories like this. We'll see you in the next one.